Laura Mitchell stared at the holographic display showing her name at the very bottom of the rankings board. 200 cadets attended the Stellar War Academy on Crucible 9 station, and she was ranked 200th. Dead last. Again. The corridor buzzed with activity as cadets from dozens of species moved between training halls. A massive Krenth warrior named Throck bumped past her without apologizing, his scaled shoulder nearly knocking her into the wall. He didn't even look down at her. "Watch where you stand, human," his friend rumbled, a four-armed Hexian whose name Laura couldn't remember. They laughed as they walked away, their heavy footsteps echoing off the metal floors. Laura pulled her tablet closer and reviewed her latest test scores. Combat simulation, failed. Strength assessment, failed. Tactical planning exercise, barely passed. The only reason she remained at the academy was because her colony had petitioned for her spot before the attack. Before everyone died. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. The academy administrators had made it clear they accepted her out of political necessity, not because they believed she belonged here. Earth wanted representation among the Galactic Defense Forces. Laura just happened to be the only survivor when the raiders came. "Hey Laura." A friendly voice cut through her thoughts. She opened her eyes to see Finn, a Quillan cadet with soft blue fur and enormous dark eyes. He was one of the few cadets who actually spoke to her like a person. "Hey Finn," she said, managing a small smile. "Don't let the board get to you," he said, gesturing at the rankings display. "You've improved since last month." "I moved from 200th to 200th, Laura said. "There's nowhere lower to go." Finn's ears twitched, and what she'd learned was his species' version of a sympathetic expression. "The physical tests aren't everything. You scored well on the history exam." "History doesn't win battles," Laura said quietly. Before Finn could respond, a sharp voice cut across the corridor. "Attention all senior cadets. Report to the Grand Arena immediately. Headmaster Keeper Dralmon has an announcement." Laura and Finn exchanged glances. Unscheduled announcements were rare. They joined the flow of cadets moving toward the arena, a massive circular chamber at the station's core that could hold 5,000 beings. The arena filled quickly. Laura found herself pushed toward the back, shorter than most species around her. She could barely see over the crowd, catching only glimpses of the platform at the center where Keeper Dralmon stood. The headmaster was ancient even by Vorlian standards, his crystalline skin reflecting the arena's lights in rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice carried through the chamber without amplification, resonating with a power that came from centuries of command. "Senior cadets of Crucible 9, he began. "For 5,000 years, our academy has trained the finest warriors in the known galaxy. You represent 200 species, 200 worlds, 200 different paths to strength." The crowd murmured with pride. Laura felt very small. "Today I announce the revival of an ancient tradition," Keeper Dralmon continued. "The trial of the Graviton Hammer." A collective gasp rippled through the arena. Laura saw cadets turning to each other, excitement building in the air. Even Finn's eyes had gone wide. "What's the Graviton Hammer?" Laura whispered. "You don't know?" Finn whispered back. "It's the most famous weapon in galactic history. It ended the old war 10,000 years ago." On the platform, a section of the floor slid open. A pedestal rose from below, and resting on it was the hammer. Even from the back of the crowd, Laura could see it clearly. The weapon seemed to draw light toward it, energy fields rippling across its surface in waves of blue and gold. The handle was long enough for 2 hands, and the head was crafted from some metal that looked like it contained stars. "The Graviton Hammer," Keeper Dralmon said, "has not been lifted in 5,000 years. Many have tried. All have failed. The weapon does not respond to strength alone, nor to technology, nor to mental power. It measures something else. Something we have forgotten how to name." Laura felt her heart beating faster. There was something about the hammer that called to her, though she couldn't explain why. "Legend says the hammer will bond with one who is worthy," the headmaster continued. "The last wielder ended the bloodiest war our galaxy has ever known. They united species that had slaughtered each other for generations. They brought peace that lasted millennia." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Every senior cadet will have the opportunity to attempt the trial," he said. "The ceremony will take place in 3 days. Prepare yourselves." The arena erupted into excited chatter. Laura watched as cadets pushed forward, trying to get a closer look at the hammer. Throck was already near the platform, studying the weapon with hungry eyes. Xen'dal, an Ascendi cadet who consistently ranked in the top 5, floated above the crowd using his species' natural telekinetic abilities, his silver skin gleaming. Do you think anyone will actually lift it? Finn asked. I don't know, Laura said. But she couldn't take her eyes off the hammer. That evening, Laura sat alone in her small quarters, researching everything she could find about the Graviton Hammer. The historical records were fragmentary. The weapon had appeared during the Old War, though no one knew where it came from. The wielder who ended the war was described in contradictory ways by different species accounts. Some called them the greatest warrior who ever lived. Others said they were weak and small, unremarkable in every way except for their ability to lift the hammer. All accounts agreed on one thing: the hammer chose its wielder based on worthiness, not strength. Laura thought about her own weakness. She'd barely survived the attack on her colony by hiding in a storage compartment while others fought and died. She'd listened to the screams, frozen in terror, unable to help. The rescue ships had found her 3 days later, the only living soul on the entire settlement. She didn't feel worthy of anything. But something about the hammer called to her anyway. Maybe it was because she had nothing left to lose. The academy would dismiss her soon enough. Her test scores guaranteed it. The trial of the Graviton Hammer was likely her last chance to prove she belonged anywhere. 3 days. She had 3 days before cadets would line up to attempt something no one had achieved in 5,000 years. 3 days before she would stand before that ancient weapon and almost certainly fail, just like she'd failed every other test. Laura looked at her reflection in the darkened window of her quarters. A small human woman stared back at her, unremarkable and weak compared to the warriors training alongside her. But she would try anyway. Because that's all she knew how to do. The grand arena had been transformed for the trial. Floating platforms surrounded the central pedestal where the Graviton Hammer rested, allowing spectators from across the galaxy to witness the ceremony through holographic projection. Laura stood near the back of the line of senior cadets, her stomach tight with nervousness. The first cadet to attempt the trial was Throck. The massive Krenth warrior approached the hammer with confidence, his scales gleaming under the arena lights. The crowd fell silent as he placed his clawed hands on the weapon's handle. Throck pulled. His muscles bulged. His feet dug into the platform. The Krenth could lift 40 tons in standard gravity, Laura knew from the training records. He'd once bent a steel support beam with his bare hands. The hammer didn't move even a fraction of an inch. Throck strained for a full minute before stepping back, breathing hard. The crowd murmured with surprise. If Throck couldn't lift it, who could? Next, Keeper Dralmon announced calmly. Cadet after cadet tried. A Hexian engineer brought a gravity manipulation device, trying to reduce the hammer's weight. The device sparked and died the moment it came near the weapon. A crystalline cadet attempted to phase through the molecular structure. Nothing happened. 3 cadets tried together, their combined strength useless. Laura watched carefully. She noticed something the others seemed to miss. Each time someone touched the hammer, energy patterns rippled across its surface. The colors changed depending on who made the attempt. For Throck, the energy had flared red, angry and violent. For the engineer, it had turned a dull gray. For others, it flickered through various shades before fading back to its dormant blue-gold state. The hammer is reading them, Laura whispered to herself. Finn had already made his attempt, his sensitive Quillen hands trembling as they touched the handle. The hammer had pulsed soft green before returning to stillness. He'd stepped away looking disappointed but not surprised. Now Xen'dal approached the platform. The Ascendi cadet was considered the best in their class, a tactical genius with powerful telekinetic abilities. His silver skin rippled with concentration as he reached for the hammer. The moment his fingers touched the metal, purple energy exploded across the weapon's surface. The crowd gasped. For a moment it looked like the hammer might actually respond. Xen'dal's eyes glowed as he channeled all his mental power into the lift. The hammer remained perfectly still. Xen'dal released it with a frustrated gesture, floating back from the platform. His expression was carefully neutral, but Laura could see the anger in the way his hands clenched. More cadets tried. The afternoon stretched into evening. Of the 200 senior cadets, not one could move the hammer even slightly. Some tried multiple times with different approaches. All failed. Instructor Karasei, the 6-armed Machine who taught advanced combat, called a break. Laura found herself standing alone near one of the arena's viewing ports, staring out at the stars beyond the station. "You're wondering if you should even try," Karasei said, appearing beside her. Laura jumped slightly. She hadn't heard the instructor approach. "I failed every other test," Laura said quietly. "Why would this be different?" Karasei's multiple eyes studied her. "Do you know why you're really here, cadet?" "My colony petitioned for a spot before," Laura stopped. before they died. That's the official reason, Karasae said. The truth is more complicated. Humans weren't invited to join the Galactic Defense Forces. Earth's petition was rejected 3 times. Your colony's destruction changed the political situation. The council felt they couldn't refuse a 4th time without appearing cruel. Laura felt something cold settle in her chest. So I'm here out of pity? You're here because the galaxy felt guilty, Karasae corrected. That's not the same as belonging. I won't lie to you, Laura. Most instructors believe you'll wash out before graduation. Some want you to fail, to prove humans aren't ready for the academy. Why are you telling me this? Laura asked. Karasae gestured toward the hammer with one of her arms. Because I was here 50 years ago when another cadet tried to lift that weapon. The hammer responded to them. Started to bond. Then it killed them. The energy overload burned their neural pathways to ash in seconds. Laura stared at the instructor. The hammer isn't just testing strength or worthiness, Karasae continued. It's searching for something specific. Something most of us don't have anymore. I don't know what you'll find when you touch it, but I think you should try. Not because I believe you'll succeed, but because you have nothing left to lose. The break ended. Cadets returned to the line. The attempts continued with the same result. Failure after failure. The crowd's excitement had faded to boredom, then to restlessness. Some spectators had disconnected from the holographic feeds. Finally, only one cadet remained. Laura felt every eye in the arena turn toward her. The silence was heavy, oppressive. She heard someone laugh, a sharp bark of sound that echoed off the walls. Others whispered, "The human. The failure. This should be entertaining." Laura walked toward the platform. Each step felt like moving through deep water. Throck watched with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Xen'dal's silver face showed open contempt. Finn gave her an encouraging nod, though his ears drooped with doubt. She climbed onto the platform. Up close, the hammer was even more beautiful. The metal seemed alive, energy flowing through channels carved into its surface. The handle was worn smooth from ancient hands. The head contained swirls of matter that looked like frozen galaxies. Laura didn't reach for it immediately. She stood before the weapon and felt a wave of emotion crash over her. Grief for her family. Shame for surviving when they hadn't. Fear of failing again. Anger at the universe for putting her in this impossible situation. She thought about what Karasae had said. The hammer was searching for something specific. Not strength. Not power. Not even worthiness in the traditional sense. Laura looked at the weapon and suddenly understood what it was. Not a tool of destruction. Not a symbol of glory or honor. The hammer was a burden. The weight of responsibility for an entire galaxy. The knowledge that one mistake could doom billions. The loneliness of standing alone when everyone else had fallen. She'd carried that weight since the day she hid while her colony burned. She'd never put it down. Laura reached out and placed her hands on the hammer's handle. The metal was warm against her palms. The energy that had rejected everyone else suddenly calmed, shifted. Red and purple and gray faded away. Blue light flooded across the weapon's surface, so bright that Laura had to squint. Around her, the arena held its breath. Laura didn't try to prove her strength. She didn't channel mental powers or rely on technology. She simply acknowledged every terrible truth about herself and gripped the hammer anyway. And the hammer recognized her. The blue light intensified until Laura couldn't see anything but radiance. She felt the hammer's weight in her hands, but it wasn't heavy. It felt right, like her hands had been shaped specifically to hold this weapon. She lifted it from the pedestal without effort, raising it above her head as energy cascaded down her arms. The arena exploded with sound. Shouts of disbelief, roars of shock, the electronic buzz of 1,000 holographic feeds activating simultaneously. Laura heard none of it. Something was happening inside her mind. A voice spoke, ancient and vast, resonating through her thoughts like thunder. Finally. One who understands. Laura's vision blurred. Images flooded her consciousness faster than she could process them. She saw war. Planets burning. Fleets of ships tearing each other apart in the void of space. Billions dying while leaders argued over territory and pride and resources that didn't matter. Then she saw the last wielder. Not a mighty warrior or a brilliant general. Just someone small and tired who picked up the hammer because no one else would. Someone who knew they would probably fail but tried anyway. "You carry the weight already," the voice said. "You have carried it since you survived. Guilt. Shame. The burden of living when others died. This is what I seek. Not strength of body. Not power of mind. The willingness to bear what cannot be borne." Laura tried to speak but couldn't. The hammer was downloading information directly into her brain. 10,000 years of combat techniques, tactical knowledge, strategic planning, weapon systems, species biology, political structures. Everything the last wielder had known, everything the hammer itself had learned across millennia. It was too much. Laura screamed. Her knees buckled. The hammer stayed in her grip as she collapsed onto the platform, her body convulsing. Pain shot through every nerve as her brain struggled to accommodate the massive data transfer. She felt like her skull was splitting open, like her mind was being rewritten at the cellular level. Through the agony she saw more visions. The last wielder standing before two massive fleets, hammer raised, refusing to let them destroy each other. The weapon creating a gravitational field so powerful it pulled both fleets out of combat range, holding them frozen in space until their leaders agreed to talk. Peace negotiations that lasted years. Treaties signed. A war that had consumed the galaxy for generations finally ending not with violence but with exhaustion and compromise. They thought the hammer made me strong, the ancient wielder's memory whispered. But I was always weak. That's why it chose me. The strong believe they can win. The weak know they'll lose but fight anyway. That's the difference. Laura's scream faded to gasps. The data transfer slowed then stopped. She lay on the platform, the hammer still clutched in her hands, her entire body trembling. Sweat soaked through her uniform. Blood dripped from her nose. Keeper Dralmon was suddenly beside her, his crystalline hands checking her vital signs. Cadet Mitchell. Can you hear me? Laura managed a weak nod. The arena swam back into focus. Every face stared at her with expressions ranging from wonder to horror. The hammer rested across her chest, its energy fields pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The trial is complete, Keeper Dralmon announced, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. The hammer has chosen. No. Xen'dal's voice cut through the air like a blade. The Ascendi cadet floated forward, his silver skin flushed dark with anger. This is impossible. The human is weakest among us. The hammer must be malfunctioning. The trial is corrupted. Murmurs of agreement rippled through some sections of the crowd. Throck remained silent, his scaled face unreadable. Other cadets looked uncertain, uncomfortable with what they'd witnessed. The hammer cannot be corrupted, Keeper Dralmon said firmly. It is incorruptible by design. What you witnessed is authentic. Then let her prove it, Xen'dal demanded. Let her demonstrate she can actually use the weapon. Anyone can hold a tool. Using it requires skill, training, power. Things she doesn't have. Laura tried to stand but her legs wouldn't support her. Finn rushed forward to help, but Keeper Dralmon raised a hand to stop him. The cadet has just undergone neural bonding, the headmaster said. She requires medical attention. This discussion can wait. How convenient, Xen'dal said coldly. The human fails every test, then suddenly lifts the most powerful weapon in galactic history, but she's too weak to prove herself? I demand the council investigate this trial. Laura found her voice though it came out hoarse. I'll prove it. Everyone turned to look at her. She used the hammer as a support, pulling herself upright. Her legs shook but held. The weapon felt warm in her grip, almost alive. She could sense its systems, understand its functions in ways she hadn't known anything moments before. Laura, don't, Finn said quietly. You need to rest. I'll prove it, Laura repeated, looking directly at Xen'dal. When I can stand without falling over. Give me time to recover. Then I'll show you what the hammer chose. Xen'dal's eyes narrowed. 3 days. In 3 days, you demonstrate your ability to wield that weapon in actual combat conditions. Or you surrender it and leave the academy. Agreed, Laura said before Keeper Dralmon could object. The headmaster looked at her with something that might have been concern or respect or both. Very well. 3 days. Medical team, escort Cadet Mitchell to the bay immediately. Laura let them help her off the platform. The hammer came with her, refusing to leave her side. When a medical technician tried to take it, the weapon's weight suddenly returned, becoming too heavy to lift. Only in Laura's hands did it remain light. She was placed on a medical transport bed. As they carried her through the arena corridors, she heard the arguments beginning behind her. Cadets shouting. Instructors debating. The holographic feeds buzzing with activity as news of the impossible lift spread across the galaxy. In the medical bay they placed her in a recovery pod. The hammer lay beside her, its blue light dimming to a soft glow. Laura closed her eyes, exhausted beyond anything she'd ever experienced. The hammer's voice whispered one last time in her thoughts before she slipped into unconsciousness. They will fear you now. Half will want you expelled, believing you're dangerous. The other half will fear what you might become. This is the burden I warned you about. Power makes everyone afraid, especially those who wanted it for themselves. Laura's last coherent thought before darkness took her was simple and true. She'd spent her entire life being afraid. Now everyone else could feel what that was like. 3 hours later, she woke to find Finn sitting beside her bed, his blue fur ruffled with worry. The hammer still rested within arm's reach, pulsing softly. "Half the academy is calling for your expulsion," Finn said quietly. "They've filed formal complaints with the council. The other half is terrified of you. Some cadets have requested transfers to different stations." Laura stared at the ceiling. "What about you?" Finn was quiet for a moment. "I'm scared too. But I'm also curious. The hammer hasn't bonded with anyone in 5,000 years. There must be a reason it chose you." "Because I'm weak," Laura said. "No," Finn replied. "Because you know you're weak and try anyway." "That's different." Laura turned her head to look at her only friend. "I have 3 days to prove I can use this thing. I nearly died just bonding with it. What if I can't control it?" "Then you'll fail like you've failed everything else," Finn said simply. "But you'll fail trying. That seems to be what the hammer respects." Laura reached out and touched the weapon. It hummed under her fingers, responding to her presence. Somewhere deep in her mind, she felt the vast knowledge it had given her, waiting to be accessed. Combat techniques from 100 species. Tactical strategies from 10,000 years of warfare. The weight of impossible responsibility. She had 3 days to learn how to carry it. Laura stood in the private training chamber instructor Karasae had reserved for her. The hammer rested against the wall, its blue light casting shadows across the room. 2 days had passed since the bonding. She had 1 day left to prove herself to Xen'dal and the academy. The problem was simple. She couldn't control the weapon. Laura approached the hammer and lifted it. The weight responded to her emotions in ways she didn't understand. When she felt confident, it became light as air. When doubt crept in, it grew heavy enough to pull her to the floor. When anger flared, the gravitational fields around it destabilized, sending objects flying across the room. "Focus," Karasae instructed from the observation window. "The hammer is reading your emotional state. You must maintain balance." Laura swung the hammer at a training dummy. The weapon moved smoothly until she thought about the cadets who wanted her expelled. Anger sparked. The hammer's energy fields exploded outward, disintegrating the dummy and cracking the wall behind it. "Stop," Karasae commanded. "You're thinking about them again." "They sabotaged my quarters last night," Laura said, breathing hard. "Someone disabled my door lock and filled my room with freezing gas. I woke up with ice in my lungs." Karasae's multiple eyes narrowed. "Do you have proof?" "No." "They were careful." Laura set the hammer down. "But I know it was Xen'dal's supporters. They want me to fail tomorrow." "Then don't give them what they want," Karasae said. "Control your emotions. Control the hammer." Laura tried again. And again. Each attempt ended the same way. The hammer responded to every flicker of fear, every surge of anger, every moment of doubt. By the end of the training session she could barely stand. "I can't do this," Laura whispered. "You survived the bonding," Karasae reminded her. "That killed the last person who tried. You're stronger than you think." "I survived by hiding," Laura said bitterly. "That's what I'm good at. Hiding while others die." Karasae was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what you think happened to your colony?" Laura didn't answer. The memory was too painful. She'd hidden in a storage compartment while raiders tore through the settlement. She'd listened to people screaming for help. She'd done nothing. "I need to keep training," Laura said, reaching for the hammer. "No," Karasae said firmly. "You need rest. Go back to your quarters. We'll resume tomorrow morning before your demonstration." Laura wanted to argue but knew the instructor was right. She was exhausted, her muscles aching from the hammer's power surging through her. She left the training chamber, the hammer floating behind her like a loyal companion. The corridors were mostly empty at this late hour. Laura kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with the few cadets she passed. She could feel their stares, hear their whispers following her. She was almost to her quarters when she heard the explosion. The sound came from the lower training levels. Laura's feet moved before her mind caught up, running toward the noise. The hammer surged forward with her, sensing her urgency. She arrived at Training Bay 7 to find chaos. Smoke poured from the entrance. Alarms blared. Through the haze, Laura could see junior cadets stumbling out, coughing and disoriented. "What happened?" Laura demanded. "Gravity field malfunction," one cadet gasped. There are 30 students still inside. The field is collapsing. It's going to implode and take half the station with it. Laura didn't hesitate. She ran into the smoke, the hammer blazing with blue light. Inside the training bay, she found the source of the problem. A massive gravity generator in the center of the room was sparking and fluctuating wildly. Junior cadets were trapped around it, unable to move as the unstable field pinned them in place. The gravity readings were climbing. In minutes, the generator would reach critical mass and create a singularity that would consume everything within 100 meters. Laura raised the hammer. She could feel its power responding to her need. The weapon was designed to manipulate gravitational forces. It could contain the collapse. But she'd barely learned to control it under calm conditions. Trying to use it now with lives at stake terrified her. Fear made the hammer heavy. It started to slip from her hands. "No," Laura said through gritted teeth. "Not now." She thought about the junior cadets. They were younger than her, many of them fresh arrivals at the academy. They hadn't asked to be caught in this disaster. She failed, they would die. Just like her colony died while she hid. But this time she wasn't hiding. Laura pushed her fear aside and swung the hammer in a wide arc. Energy exploded from the weapon, blue light flooding the training bay. She directed the gravitational field outward, wrapping it around the malfunctioning generator like a net. The hammer fought her, its power enormous and wild. She felt blood vessels bursting in her eyes, felt her bones creaking under the strain. The generator's collapse slowed. Reversed. The trapped cadets fell free as Laura redirected the unstable gravity field into a contained sphere. Sweat poured down her face. Her muscles screamed. The hammer's AI whispered warnings about neural overload, about pushing too hard too fast. Laura ignored it all. She compressed the field tighter, forcing the generator's energy into a stable configuration. The alarm stopped. The sparking ceased. The sphere of contained gravity hovered in the air, harmless now, waiting for technicians to safely disperse it. Laura released the hammer and collapsed. The weapon clattered to the floor beside her. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. Everything hurt. Junior cadets surrounded her, their voices distant and echoing. Someone was calling for medical assistance. Finn's face appeared above her, his expression terrified. "Laura, stay with me," he said. "Did everyone get out?" Laura managed to ask. "Yes. You saved 30 lives." "Good," Laura whispered, and then darkness took her. She woke in the medical bay for the second time in 3 days. The hammer rested beside her bed, its light dim but steady. Karsae stood at the foot of the bed, along with Keeper Dralmon. "The generator was sabotaged," Karsae said without preamble. "Someone tampered with the safety systems. It was meant to fail during a training session." "To kill junior cadets?" Laura asked, horrified. "To create a situation where you would try to use the hammer beyond your abilities," Keeper Dralmon said. "Whoever did this wanted you to die attempting a rescue. They nearly succeeded." Laura touched her face. Bandages covered her eyes. "How bad is it?" "Burst blood vessels, neural strain, muscle damage," Karsae listed. "You'll recover, but it will take time. The medical team says you pushed yourself far beyond safe limits. Another few seconds and the hammer's power would have burned out your nervous system completely." "But I did it," Laura said. "I controlled it." "Barely," Karsae replied. "And you nearly died doing it." The hammer's voice spoke in Laura's mind, clear and certain. "You understand now. Strength is lifting weight. Power is bearing burden. Every time you use me, you risk destruction. Every time you hold back, someone might die. This is the price. This is what I measure. Not whether you can win, but whether you're willing to pay the cost." Laura lay silent, absorbing the truth. She'd saved 30 lives and nearly destroyed herself in the process. A new voice interrupted her thoughts. Throck entered the medical bay, his massive frame filling the doorway. He approached her bed and stood looking down at her with his reptilian eyes. "You saved my younger brother," he said quietly. He was among the junior cadets trapped in that bay. Laura hadn't known. "I'm glad he's safe." "I challenged you once through mockery and dismissal," Throck said. "Now I challenge you properly. A formal duel. Not to harm you, but to see what the hammer truly chose. To understand why it rejected me and accepted you." "When?" Laura asked. "Graduation combat trials," Throck replied. "1 week. You'll face multiple opponents, including me. The entire academy will watch. If you survive what happened today, you can survive that." He turned to leave, then paused. "The hammer chose correctly. I see that now. I can lift 40 tons, but I couldn't lift the weight you carry." After he left, Laura touched the hammer. It hummed under her fingers, responding to her presence. 1 week until graduation combat trials. 1 week to learn how to use this power without destroying herself. 1 week to prove she belonged at the academy. The price of power was pain. The hammer had shown her that. But she'd paid it once to save 30 lives. She would pay it again if she had to. The week passed too quickly. Laura spent every waking hour training with the hammer, learning to control its power without letting it consume her. Karsae pushed her hard, teaching her to use precision instead of raw force. The hammer responded better when Laura fought smart rather than strong. Now graduation combat trials had arrived. The grand arena was packed with spectators from across the galaxy. Every seat filled. Every holographic feed active. They'd come to see if the human who lifted the impossible hammer could actually fight. Laura stood in the preparation chamber, the hammer resting against her shoulder. Her hands were steady but her heart raced. Through the walls, she could hear the crowds roar as Keeper Dralmon explained the trial format. Each graduating cadet would face 3 opponents in succession. Victory wasn't required, only a demonstration of skill and growth. But everyone knew Laura's trials would be different. The entire galaxy was watching to see if the hammer had made a mistake. Cadet Mitchell, a voice called through the chamber's speaker. You're first. Laura walked into the arena. The crowd's noise hit her like a physical force. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species, all focused on her. The hammer's weight shifted in her hands, responding to her nervousness. She took a breath and steadied herself. Her first opponent entered from the opposite side. A Hexian named Vorel, fast and skilled with 4 arms that could strike from multiple angles simultaneously. Laura had lost to him twice in training simulations. The match began. Vorel rushed forward, his arms blurring with speed. Laura didn't try to match his strength. Instead, she used the hammer's gravitational field to slow his movements, creating pockets of heavy gravity that made his strikes predictable. She dodged rather than blocked, letting him exhaust himself while she conserved energy. When Vorel overextended on a punch, Laura swept the hammer low, using its field to pull his feet out from under him. He crashed to the arena floor. The match ended. The crowd murmured with surprise. Laura had won without landing a single strike. Her second opponent was tougher. A crystalline warrior named Shard who could change her body's density at will, becoming either diamond hard or mist-like. Laura couldn't predict which form Shard would take from moment to moment. This time Laura used the hammer's knowledge database. The weapon had fought crystalline warriors before, thousands of years ago. It knew their patterns, their weaknesses. Laura stopped trying to hit Shard and instead focused on controlling the space around her. She created gravitational wells that disrupted Shard's ability to shift forms smoothly. When Shard became mist to avoid an attack, Laura used the hammer to compress the air, forcing her opponent back into solid form. Shard yielded after 5 minutes, breathing hard. Well fought, she said, respect in her voice. 2 matches won. The crowd's surprise had turned to genuine interest. Maybe the human wasn't just lucky. Maybe the hammer had seen something real. Then Throck entered the arena. The massive Krenth warrior carried no weapon. He didn't need one. His scaled body was armor itself, his claws capable of tearing through steel. He'd been one of the top-ranked cadets for 3 years running. No hard feelings, Throck said as they faced each other. I want to see what you can do. Same, Laura replied. The match began. Throck moved with surprising speed for his size, closing the distance between them in seconds. His first strike could have shattered concrete. Laura barely dodged, feeling the wind from his clawed hand pass centimeters from her face. She couldn't match his strength. Couldn't match his speed or durability. But she'd learned something during her week of training. The hammer didn't make her stronger. It made her smarter. Laura studied Throck's fighting pattern. He favored his right side, protecting an old injury to his left ribs. He telegraphed his power strikes by shifting his weight first. He expected opponents to retreat, to fight defensively. So Laura attacked. She used the hammer's gravitational field to enhance her movements, not to strike but to position. She stayed close, too close for Throck to use his full strength. When he swung, she redirected his momentum with careful applications of gravity, making him fight against his own power. When he tried to grab her, she slipped away using techniques the hammer had shown her from ancient combat styles. Throck was stronger. But Laura was more precise. The fight lasted 12 minutes. The longest match of the trials. Finally, Throck stepped back, breathing heavily, and raised a hand in surrender. Enough, he said. I understand now. The hammer didn't choose strength. It chose wisdom. The crowd erupted. Laura had defeated one of the Academy's best warriors. Not through power but through intelligence and adaptation. Keeper Draumon stepped forward to announce her graduation, but Xen'dal's voice cut through the celebration. One more match, the Ascendi cadet said, floating into the arena. She's faced 3 opponents. Let her face a 4th. Let her face me. The crowd fell silent. This wasn't part of the official trials. Xen'dal was making an unofficial challenge, one Laura could refuse without penalty. But she saw the rage in his silver face, the wounded pride of someone who'd expected to lift the hammer himself. If she refused now, he'd claim she was afraid. The doubt would follow her forever. Accepted, Laura said. Keeper Draumon looked concerned but nodded. A 4th match then. Cadet Xen'dal versus Cadet Mitchell. Begin. Xen'dal attacked immediately with his telekinetic powers. Laura felt invisible forces trying to rip the hammer from her grip. She held tight, using the weapon's own gravitational field to anchor herself. Xen'dal lifted debris from around the arena and hurled it at her. Laura deflected each piece with precise applications of gravity, never using more power than necessary. The hammer hummed in her hands, stable and controlled. Fight back. Xen'dal screamed, his composure cracking. Use its power. Show everyone what you really are. But Laura understood what he wanted. He wanted her to lose control, to demonstrate that the hammer was too powerful for her, that it should never have chosen a weak human. He wanted her to fail publicly. She refused to give him that satisfaction. Laura fought defensively, turning aside his attacks, never striking back. Xen'dal grew more desperate, his attacks more wild. He poured his full telekinetic power into one massive assault, trying to crush her with compressed air. Laura raised the hammer to counter it. The 2 forces met in the center of the arena, energy crackling between them. Then the arena system screamed a warning. The power surge from their clash had overloaded the gravitational stabilizers. The floor beneath them began to buckle, emergency systems failing. A section of the arena floor collapsed. Xen'dal, focused entirely on attacking Laura, didn't see it happen. He fell toward the gap, toward the exposed power conduits 50 meters below. If he hit them while channeling telekinetic energy, the explosion would kill him and everyone in the lower sections. Laura didn't think. She leaped forward and swung the hammer. Its gravitational field caught Xen'dal mid-fall, stopping his descent. She pulled him back to solid ground, using every bit of control she'd learned over the past week. The effort drove her to her knees. The hammer slipped from her hands, clattering across the arena floor. Xen'dal lay gasping beside her, alive and unharmed. Why? He asked, his silver face twisted with confusion. I was trying to destroy you. Because you're a cadet, Laura said simply. Same as me. The match doesn't matter more than your life. Keeper Draumon's voice boomed across the arena. The trial is complete. Cadet Mitchell has demonstrated not only skill and power, but the judgment to know when not to use them. She prioritized life over victory. This is the mark of a true warrior. The crowd's response was deafening. Even those who doubted her couldn't deny what they'd witnessed. The graduation ceremony followed. Laura stood with the other cadets as Keeper Draumon presented their commissions. When he reached her, he held up a different insignia than the others. Cadet Laura Mitchell, he announced. By authority of the Galactic Council and by choice of the Graviton Hammer, I present you with the rank of Galactic Warden. The first human to hold this position. The first wielder of the hammer in 5,000 years. Laura accepted the insignia with trembling hands. Galactic Warden. The highest rank in the Defense Forces, answerable only to the Council itself. Throck approached first, offering his clawed hand. I'm glad the hammer rejected me now. You'll carry its weight better than I ever could. Finn hugged her, his blue fur damp with happy tears. I told you there was a reason. Even Xen'dal approached, though he struggled with the words. You saved my life when you could have let me fall. I won't forget that. Karasae found her after the ceremony. 50 years ago, I watched the hammer kill someone who tried to claim it. Today I watched it choose someone worthy. You were ranked last because we measured the wrong things. Laura looked at the hammer, which had returned to her side as always. Its blue light pulsed steadily, calm and certain. The weapon's AI spoke one final time in her thoughts. They thought weakness disqualified you. But weakness is knowing you might fail and trying anyway. Strength is just being able to lift weight. Courage is lifting it even when it's too heavy. That's what I was looking for. That's what I found. Laura understood now. The hammer hadn't chosen her despite her fear, her doubt, her shame over surviving when others died. It had chosen her because of those things. Because she knew what it meant to carry impossible burdens. because she would try to save others even when she couldn't save herself. She'd entered the academy as the lowest-ranked cadet, the human who didn't belong. She graduated as a galactic warden, chosen by a weapon that had waited 5,000 years for someone who understood the difference between power and responsibility. Laura Mitchell looked out at the stars beyond the arena, the hammer resting on her shoulder, and smiled. She was ready for whatever came next.